What's going on, guys? Back on the Winning Browns podcast for whatever the number episode is. Now I'm kind of forgetting. We haven't really recorded in a while, but
Yeah.
this is where us two Indian kids try to win more subscribers, win over more channels now, as we're gonna make a big announcement um, than anything the Browns could ever dream of. Super Bowls, wins, whatnot. We are gonna win over more subscribers on every platform we have, and we have
Yep.
a big announcement to make to start off this new episode. We are officially launching on TikTok. We are going to be putting some of our shorts, specifically our draft shorts and other content in the future, on that platform, to try to broadcast our channel a little bit more, grow it a little more. Like we said, we're really trying to like make this channel take off now that we're getting a little more free time, being able to kind of expand our horizons that way, and find new ways of being able to expand our platform to other people who might be able to kind of help and guide us along the way. That way we can make more interesting content and make this a more fun process for you guys to enjoy as much as ourselves. So I would like to announce that I think Akhilesh and I both know we have some really fun content coming up for you,
Yep.
especially in today's episode. Um, and as far as this episode, we're going to start off with talking about just free agency in general and kind of the transactions that have, because a lot more underrated and a lot more silent free agency moves happened after that crazy first week. And I do want to ask you, Akhilesh, whether you have any team in particular that really kind of piqued your interest as far as what happened throughout the entirety of free agency.
Look, I'm gonna be honest. I think you might agree with me on this one, but I think I gotta go with Jacksonville.
Jacksonville.
This team is the sleeper of this whole free agency. I mean, you look at they bring in I think Gabe Davis, if I'm not wrong, from the
Yes.
Buffalo Bills, and then they bring in I mean, you've talked about this for a lot of weeks, especially in our conversations that we've had in school. If you look at the film, which I had not previously, and I looked at it pretty recently. Um, their linebacker core is, I would say, it's the most perfect linebacker core in the league. I understand San Francisco, Baltimore. We understand those levels. Reason why I say that is this: these guys are young, aggressive, and I think the thing about linebacker cores that people still haven't got to level is you need to have two linebackers, three different linebackers rather different, that each of them have different capabilities. One can do one that another can't do. In this case, I think that they have really the perfect linebacker system. I mean, you look at it from the standpoint of can they run defend, side to side motion from one side of the field to the other? Can they be aggressive? Can they blitz really well? Are they quick? Each person on on that linebacker squad has different capabilities that make them, I would say, I mean, like I'm gonna give them a name right now. I'm gonna call them I don't know, the Jacksonville
Tacklesville.
Tacklesville is a good one. I was about to say the Jacksonville Fortress if you want. Like you could pull out some names on that. Like this team from the linebacker standpoint is creating something very similar to really what reminds you of the 1970s Steelers. Again, it's not at that level, don't get me wrong, but like that physicality, the ability to run from side to side, I think they have a great linebacker core. I want to start off with that. You look at this offense, Trevor Lawrence, you have Travis Etienne, you have a growing offensive line. It is definitely a concern from a blocking standpoint because we've seen Trevor Lawrence get hit again and again and again. But I do believe in this draft, especially with the offensive lines, the depth of this offensive line class, one of the best we've easily seen in the past 2 decades. This is just definitely one of those drafts where they can come in really high with that. But they've secured their receivers. I mean, last year we saw what they did with getting Christian Kirk, if I'm not wrong, is the
Christian Kirk.
receiver's
Last year
name.
they got Calvin Ridley. The year before they got
Yeah,
Christian Kirk.
Christian Kirk. I mean, they're bringing in slowly one by one, and then now they add Gabe Davis, who, okay, this season was a bit of a letdown, if we're by any statistical means and film wise also. But we've seen him grow overall. I mean, people do respect this guy as an overall receiver. I get he is getting older and stuff, but I think this guy's going to have a tremendous impact. So from a receiver standpoint, they're settled. Again, tight end wise, there are many tight end sleepers in this draft. So they can also pick up some tight ends in that. Doug Peterson, obviously, I mean, look, we can say what he did in Philadelphia and how it went down, but at the same time, the man did lead. Nick Foles to a Super Bowl. Let's be clear on that. I mean, 41 points against Bill Belichick's defense in a Super Bowl is nothing to slide on. So they're
People forget what he
definitely in
did the
great
year after
hands.
too. A lot of the time, they were
Yeah,
6-7 dead in the water. Led them back to the playoffs. They almost beat the New Orleans Saints, who were the number one seed that
yeah.
year. If it
I
had
mean,
not been for an Alshon Jeffrey, botched
yeah.
catch, who knows what would have happened after
Who?
that?
Yeah. I mean, they could have been two times. You never know, right? So I think from that standpoint, like Doug Peterson, obviously really respected. Trevor Lawrence, I mean, he could really project himself to be a top five quarterback this season. I do based on the talent that he has on that team. You look at Travis Etienne. I didn't believe in it, but I think this guy does have some running ability. I really thought he was just going to be the pass catching running back, and I didn't really like him for that reason. But we've seen him grow overall as a runner inside. I felt the bare front of it when he ran the whole 30-yard on the Chargers, unnecessarily a disastrous day by any means. But I think the Jaguars are the sleeper of this free agency. You look at what they can. Although defensively, I do have to mention they need help on cornerbacks. They need help on safeties overall. I think that's one of their biggest concerns. I'm surprised. Again, I'm not shocked that they didn't go for it, considering the talent that was here. I mean, it's not by any means like a horrible free agency. Don't get me wrong for cornerbacks, defensive backs, things like that. But I think they wait 2 more years to can get someone more value. So I respect the way they've gone about free agency, but in terms of sleeper, not talked about enough. 100% Jackson Jaguars.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I'm not I'm gonna pick a different team, but as far as just kind of summarizing what you said, I 100% agree with you. Like I said, I've been talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars where they're underrated and whatnot. A few things, starting with what you mentioned, Trevor Lawrence. A couple of stats that I think are especially telling about him. Number one, he had the highest EPA of or the third highest EPA of any quarterback in the second half of 2022. And he continued that success. He had the fourth highest EPA of any quarterback entering the bye week and then entering the trade deadline. He had, I think, a top five um, this past season. And so he was playing very well and really starting to see that development. I think he really fell apart once the ankle injury said. Something you said about the offensive lineman, about him getting sacked over and over and over again. It's actually kind of interesting because the Jaguars had one of the better O lines in the league before Trevor Lawrence got that ankle injury, and afterwards, his pressure to sack conversion rate almost doubles. So it kind of shows that in a way Trevor Lawrence became more hesitant with the ball. Maybe his footing was bad, so he's wasn't
Yeah,
he's kind of pulling
belief.
back a few throws, whatnot. Definitely, he was throwing a lot more checkdowns. If you look at the film, he was becoming a little more passive, and I think those things kind of held back the Jaguars, and then as a result, they ended up missing out on the playoffs. Um, if Lawrence is fully healthy, I have no doubt that he's going to really take that next step and become the quarterback that we all think he is. Um, and then as far as the receiving pieces you go, I mean, you talked about the linebackers and kind of how they have to like make up for each other's deficiencies, kind of fit in together like a pieces of the puzzle. I think that you could say that about multiple position groups with the Jaguars, the receivers, and I'll even include the tight ends because let's be honest, Evan Ingram's more like a receiver than a tight
Yeah.
but they make up for a lot of each other's flaws. Evan Ingram's that big possession receiver who has that good route running. You
You,
got
you,
Gabe
you you know,
Davis.
Yash, I just want to interject here. I think that's what makes great teams. I don't think great teams are that a person that perfectly fits his position. I think great teams are a combination of different ingredients that together make a nice
Like
dish.
a puzzle, yeah, and we've
Yeah,
mentioned that before. We talked about how that makes the Chiefs very good, even though maybe they don't like. Even this year, we saw the receiving core was definitely not even close to the best receiving core in the league, but they did fit each other like a pieces of a puzzle, and and certain players stepped up when necessary. You didn't have Kadarius Toney help in a certain instances, but then you have that quarterback like Mahomes, who's elite, who makes those plays and gives the ball when necessary to certain players. You have a play caller like Andy Reid who puts them in great positions. So it helps them. As far
mm,
as the defense goes, I genuinely do think this is probably going to be one of the better defenses in the league. You mentioned the addition of Eric Armstead. I think, Trent Baalke was the guy who drafted Armstead. He had some good years under Baalke's tenure, and then, the first few years of Shanahan in a 3-4 defense until they changed it to a 4-3, and I think it was 2019. Um, the big thing is going to be he's going to be relied on more as a run defender, but we've seen Balky have that type of use those types of players in similar roles, a la Justin Smith. You have a guy like Devon Hamilton, who reminds me a lot of like a Ray McDonald or an Isaiah Sopanoga, if anybody of you remember those guys from the Niners days.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, but then you look at the linebacker core. You got Justin Smith, you got Josh Allen, you got Trayvon Walker, two really young defensive linemen, and then of course the
Yeah.
linebacker core, which I
Underrated, heavily underrated, I would say. Josh Allen, especially, I would
es-
say he's heavily underrated. I mean,
and
this guy can, he's the ultimate outside linebacker. He can go into coverage, he can rush the passer. Like, okay, from my personal standpoint, he is a bit slow on his get off. I will say that.
absolutely.
But overall, fantastic player on outside linebacker. Although, I'm interested to hear what's the sleeper then. Because you talked
Absolutely.
about this
I'll
Jackson.
just finish off with this. The thing with the Jaguars that is especially just telling is the big thing is going to be Ryan Nielsen, their defensive coordinator. I really like this man. I really like what he did with the Saints, what he did with the Falcons, improving that defense from one of the worst in the league to a top 10 unit. I mean, he to me, he could. You're talking about a guy who I'm looking at 5 years could be one of the best coaches in the NFL. I'm not kidding when I say that. He is genuinely one of the more impressive guys. His resume is top notch. With you have with the defensive unit with the Jaguars, this might be a sleeper team, not just as far as what they've done in free agency, but they could genuinely make a run for the AFC Championship.
Yeah,
Things go their way, maybe
100%.
in the Super Bowl. But as far as the team I'm gonna pick, it's hard to say that with the Chiefs, obviously.
I was about to say, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. If things go their way,
It's not impossible, don't get me wrong. It's not
yeah.
impossible, but at the same time, it's a far stretch. But
Oh yeah,
I want
for
to hear
sure.
it now.
But as far as the team, I'm gonna say the Detroit Lions. This is a team that really shocked. I looked at them a couple days ago and I was shocked. I didn't even know they made some of these moves, but they got some really, really underrated pieces to fill in those holes on the defense. They really have only one hole, in my opinion. It's not even that big, and it's at receiver. They still have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's one of the best receivers in the game. They got plenty of depth with guys like Khalif Raymond, Josh Reynolds, etc. And then you got Jameson Williams, who's looking to make that third-year jump. You might want to add another receiver, obviously, to the mix based on what happened in the NFC Championship game. But as far as the defense, they added a lot of, and I mean a lot of really, really impressive players from DJ Reader, who's been one of the more underrated interior D linemen in the game these past few years, as both a run defender and a pass rusher. I mean, this guy can play across the defensive line in whatever 4-3-3-4. He has a lot of versatility that
Leverage,
way.
a lot of leverage.
Oh yeah, and you add him to a defensive line. I'm looking at this. You add him to a defensive line that includes the likes of Aiden Hutchinson, Lee McNeil, Levi Onwuzurike, James Houston, Julian Okwara. I mean, these guys are deep at the pass rush. And then they added a guy
Okay.
who I wanted them to add last year in Marcus Davenport.
Yeah.
Extremely freaky athletic,
Okay. Yeah.
extremely good in
Yeah.
that Saints type of system. He had 9 sacks a couple years ago. If a guy like Aaron Glenn, when he worked with him, if you tap into his athletic potential, this is going to be a scary, scary unit. You add guys on the back end. Manuel Mosley's coming back. Brian Branch, what's his name? Kirby Joseph, and then you
Yeah.
added a
It's
guy like
true.
Carlton Davis to the mix, who like Jamar Chase. A lot of some of the top receivers in the game have been saying he's one of the more underrated cornerbacks. I've been talking about his man coverage since 2020.
Yeah.
He's one of the more instinctive, hands-on cornerbacks in the league. I mean, you're looking at a Lions team that really fills in everything, and you're looking at a team that has a lot of depth defensively. As far as schematics go, that's going to remain a question, but obviously they kept Ben Johnson offensively. That's going to be key. This is looking like a very, very scary team, and with the Niners not making, I don't think the Niners exactly stepped on the gas pedal as far as capitalizing free agency moves.
Yeah.
I'm pissed off about that, but we'll see what they do with the draft. The Lions might have their foot on the doorstep to maybe making the Super Bowl, and this is a
Yeah.
team you got to watch out for. Not many people are talking about them, but this is a really, really, really good team in great position to do a lot of damage this next season.
Look, you make great points. I mean, you look at the defensive additions, especially to the defensive. I mean, we from the Lions last season, defense was the reason for why they couldn't make the Super Bowl. They couldn't win games when it most mattered. This defense was lackluster in a lot of situations. Look, what I would say about this is I'm not sure if I am as high as you are when it comes to Detroit Lions. I get it. I mean, they've made some great additions. My point with the Detroit Lions is they made great sleeper decisions while giving away great big players. I hope you understand what I'm kind of saying. I
Absolutely.
mean, Okay, from my standpoint, I think I hate to say it, but I think the safety is the most important position from the defensive standpoint in the NFL right now.
Wow.
The safety determines everything for me. The way the linebackers are going to move, the way the defensive line is going to stay. It, I mean, for me, when we say let's just look at common terminology: cover four, cover three, cover two, cover six, whatever it is. It's all based on the safety. It's all based on the safety.
Right.
Cover two is two safeties up top. Cover four is two safeties up top, two cornerbacks. Right. So everything is centered around the safety in terms of defensive play caller position. That's the reason why I'm not high on the line as much as you are. Don't get me wrong. It's a good
Really?
defense. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they have the safety depth that they had last year. Right.
Maybe not, but I feel like the versatility is something that's definitely to be seen.
Sure, but I mean I mean, okay, look, versatility for me goes only to a certain standpoint. Okay, you can be as an athletic freak you can be, but I need to see some smarts. I need to see some IQ showing on that field. If you're a safety, right? Okay, from my standpoint, honestly, what I'm thinking is with the athleticism the Lions are doing, what they're gonna do is this might be a lot of terminology, but bear with me. I'll try to explain it as simple as possible. But what they're going to do is they're going to put these athletic guys in the nickel, and then they're going to make the nickel play so deep in zone that he may be part of that cover one buzz or cover two undercover buzz. What I mean by that is, sorry guys, what I mean by that is essentially when I say an undercover one buzz, it means there are two safeties. One is the one cover one, that one safety, he's going to be guarding the top. The other one is going to be guarding kind of the bottom, but he's going to be the central defender, just going around everywhere based on his line of defense or the amount of area that he covers. But I think that's what they're going to do with these freaky athletic guys. But my point is, even if that is going to work, you need one dominant, like, safety who can read the field better than anybody else. So I look, maybe they're seeing somebody in next year's draft. Next year's draft has a crazy number of
Yeah.
defensive, like great guys on defense next year. So maybe they're looking into that. I don't know, but this is my personal feel on the line. So again, not mad about the decision, but just my personal opinion when it comes to lines. Now, next, what I do want to go over, Yash, is kind of your mock draft. Essentially, who you think is going to go?
Well, here
Um,
we go. Well, we have the what's it called? The mock draft. What's it called? The website back up. As we know, it is what's it called? We are using Pro Football Network's mock draft simulator. Um, as always, and because we are poor and we cannot afford the resources that PFF or the Draft Network afford
okay,
us.
I wouldn't say
Um,
we're poor. Okay, I wouldn't say we're poor,
hey,
but I
we're
get
hey, we're kids, we're broke, right? Most of our money comes from our parents, right? So, but
yeah.
here I'm gonna share the screen, Akhilesh, and basically,
Okay,
um, as we know, so I'm basically controlling the draft board right now. So, Akhilesh, if you want to tell me any trade that you have
go
in
ahead.
mind, if you don't mind, I'm gonna
I'm
do
gonna
the
give you the
odd picks.
interesting one. I will give you an interesting one. You better watch out. Okay.
If you don't
You
mind,
want
I'm gonna take the odd picks if you don't mind.
okay. Can I
Sure.
just request one thing for my
Yeah,
personal benefit?
absolutely.
Can I just go with the Chargers for mine? I'm sorry, man.
Oh,
I
sure.
have to do it. Okay.
Sure, no
You,
problem.
you please go ahead.
Actually, then
You
in
please
that
go
case,
ahead.
I'll go with the even. I'll go with the
No,
even.
no, 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 no,
No, no, no,
no.
no, 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 no.
Trust me.
All right.
Oh, damn.
I'll go with the
Okay.
even. I'll go with the even.
All right.
Or actually,
Okay.
hold up. The 49ers would pick okay, 31. Never mind. Never mind. I'll go with the odd.
Yeah.
All right,
There you
yeah.
go.
All right. Well, at number one, at this point, it's not even really
A
it's
debate.
so obvious to me. I would bet my whole no, I'm not gonna bet actually because we've
Okay.
seen what's happened with some of the betting stuff that's going on in sports where
Shohei Otani.
hey,
Oh my God. I
Jonte
don't follow
Porter,
baseball, but
JB
that was
Bickerstaff,
crazy.
it's been a crazy week as far as betting, and it's something that needs to be addressed for sure. Um, but as far as number one, I'm not going to say any more. Caleb Williams is going to be the number one. As far as number two,
Yeah.
number three is going to be interesting. I want to see what you do with this pick.
Number two, I'm gonna go ahead. Based off what I've seen on film, I don't like quarterbacks, but I have studied this class. Okay, guys, this is one of those better classes that we've seen. I'm gonna go here with. I think at this point, to me, it seems like a clear lock based on the way that the offense is positioned, based on the way that I think the Washington Commanders want to move along with their offense. They need a guy who can stretch the ball, who can run, who can also throw the ball deep. They also have that type of receivers on their squad. I'm going to take Jaden Daniels out of LSU to go to the Washington Commanders. I think it's a
Look,
good move.
Kingsbury loves his dual threats, man.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense for Drake May to really go at number 3. Drake May reminds me a lot of actually Joe Flacco, believe it or not. Big arm, big guy, can run decently, but not the greatest. And Alex Van Pelt is the offensive coordinator, former Browns offensive coordinator. So I really would not be shocked at this happening. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if the Patriots trade up with Washington to get Drake May. I don't know if that's going to be
Maybe.
possible, but I'm going to pick at number 3 Drake May.
Number 4, I'm gonna go ahead and go with Marvin Harrison Jr. I think first of all, I really like overall Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's one of the best receivers to come in the draft. Period. Like I get his dad was Hall of Famer, nothing more to say, right? But this guy has the same abilities as his father, but I would say at a higher level because he has strength. He's better at blocking. Maybe not as much speed, but his hands are incredible. Incredible, really, when it comes to his hands. So, overall, great receiver. Number 5. Now, this is where my if I may say my personally honestly very poor general manager skills. I'm not a general manager, guys. I'm just gonna keep it very straight. But I'm gonna go with the Minnesota Vikings will trade number 11 and number 23 picks to move up to number 5.
See, I was gonna do the exact same
Switch.
thing, but if you don't
Switch.
mind, I'm gonna say I'm gonna go even more on a limb, and I'm gonna say
Okay.
something else that I think that they're gonna do. I was gonna make the same exact trade, but I also think the Vikings are gonna double down even further. I'm gonna add another first round pick to this.
Why not, man?
No, look,
We appreciate it. We appreciate
knowing
it.
Joe Hortis, he's going to find a way to
Joe
milk
Ortiz.
out every Joe Hortiz, correct.
Yeah.
He's
Sorry.
going to milk out every
Yeah.
single pick he can get out of this.
Although I must say this, Keenan Allen was only a 4th round pick.
Correct. But look at
That's
what
what.
the Ravens did with Orlando Brown
Yeah.
Jr. That's why I'm
Yeah.
saying
That's
that
true.
this is a
That's true.
quarterback, so it's going to matter a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen was a 32-year-old receiver, so it's going to
That's
be a
true.
little different as far as the value goes.
But
That's why
hey,
I'm going
by the
to
way, man,
say
some people
3
are saying
first round.
that was a horrible move from the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm gonna say this. Look at what we're about to get on this draft. That's all I'm saying. So number 5 though. Now here is where it all matters. For me, I'm gonna take JJ McCarthy out of Michigan to be the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. This guy, I must admit personally, okay, he has not been talked about enough. He's been talked about, not enough. I mean, I personally must say myself, I wasn't really a guy who was really top of him because it wasn't like he had to carry his team. He had a great team to go off of. I mean, you look Blake Corum, incredible running back when you look at Blake Corum. But what I must say when it comes to JJ McCarthy is he can find those holes. And that's one of the most important things you need to find as a quarterback. Those tight spaces, he's able to fit them in. I mean, you look at the Ohio State game; those are some tough passes that he was putting in. So I am going to go with JJ McCarthy. I think the Vikings are going to get a fantastic quarterback out of that.
Personally, and I'm a huge fan of JJ McCarthy, both because he went to Michigan, but I also really like his film, whatnot. I do think he's going to be great. Personally, I don't think the Vikings are the greatest fit for him, but I certainly do think that they're a pretty good fit. Although I would not want him to go here if I was JJ McCarthy. If I was the Vikings, I wouldn't personally draft McCarthy. He wouldn't be my
Yeah.
guy to be drafted there. I From what I've seen in mock drafts, this is most likely to happen. And I don't think it's going to be a bad move whatsoever. Kevin O'Connell is certainly a great coach, and he's going to have a ball playing with guys like Justin Jefferson, whatnot. So I'm all for this pick. At number 6, given that I have picked 6 and 7, I'm actually going to go down. I'm going to go down the quarterbacks trading up, or teams with quarterback needs trading up, and I'm going to go with the Denver Broncos. Going up to trade for Bo Nix. And I don't know if this is going to work, but let's see. I'm going to say that they trade pick 12 and another first round from next year for pick number 6. That did not work. Let's see. So just for the sake of this draft, I'm going to say that what I would assume this pick to go down is the Giants pick trade the sixth overall pick as well as the first round next year and a third
Yeah.
round picks next year, but just for the sake because this
Wow.
machine is kind of
Sure.
bad.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just trade this.
Okay.
We're only doing
That's
a one
probably not
round.
what's going to happen, but
Yeah, it's not what's gonna happen, but yeah, the PFN can be kind of a pain in the butt sometimes. So, but yeah, we have Bo Nix being drafted at number 6. John
okay.
Payton's gonna love him. He's very mobile. He's very good as far as intermediate passes and being able to kind of throw across his body, a la Drew Brees. I don't think he's as close to a JJ McCarthy as far as the Drew Brees comparison goes, but certainly he has Drew Brees as traits. Um, he's very mobile. He's very elusive, high IQ. Sean Payton's going to love him. He'll be great with guys like Marvin Mims and Cortland Sutton. I have no doubt about that. But at number 7, I think this is the easiest. This is going to be the easiest
Yeah,
pick in the draft.
without
Joe
a doubt.
Alt. I pondered whether the Titans might trade down with this pick, but given the Falcons and the Bears and who's afterwards, I just don't feel. I feel like they'd want to just stay safe and just pick the guy with who they know they're going to get, who they want, and who's the best tackle in this draft, and that's Joe Alt. I've heard a lot of Bruce Matthews comparisons with him recently. I don't know if he's going to be a Bruce Matthews, but hey, that would be fun to see. The Titans always seem to get good tackles, man.
Yeah, they do. So I supposedly go with number 8, but I'll also do 11 and 23 because Chargers, right? So with number 8, what I'm gonna go ahead and say is, first of all, from their standpoint, they definitely need a guy who can be an edge rusher, but I think they need run defense more than anything else. I think they need a guy that's gonna be versatile all over, who can play on both sides of that defensive line. I'm gonna go with the guy that people aren't talking. Well, I put out my edge list, right? And I said number 1 was Laiatu Latu. So that's exactly why I'm not gonna go with Laiatu Latu. Instead, I'm
Whoa.
gonna go with Jared Verse out of FSU. Now, I've talked about him a lot. Frankly, Yash knows my opinion. I was not a big fan of watching him. But that's because he was an edge rusher. As I said, the Atlanta Falcons need a guy who can play inside more than they need an outside edge rusher at this standpoint. And I also think, based on what free agency brings next season and the talent that comes next season, they're going to stall and they're going to wait and they're going to rebuild. They're going to take time. So I think that's why Jared Verse coming out of FSU is going to be the perfect fit for them at number 8.
That's interesting that you said that, given the fact that Latu has actually been soaring up draft boards. But I'm not shocked based on the idea of the run defense. They certainly need that, and you add in kind of their new coaching staff, Raheem Morris.
Yeah,
He's gonna find
very
pass
good
rushers
point.
on the
Very
fly.
good
The
point.
run defense, that's something to come by. You need a guy like Jared Verse in that system. You threw me off a little, but I was gonna think that you were gonna draft Latu, but
Me
given
too.
now that Dallas Turner is probably the best fit for the Chicago Bears, I'm gonna go Dallas Turner. I think he's the perfect fit for the Chicago Bears. Um, I do. I was pondering the Giants trading up to go and get a receiver.
Yeah.
However, I do think that the Bears are not going to want to risk trading down. So I think the Bears are just going to stick there and basically draft their guy. So for that reason, I'm going to say that they go and take Dallas Turner at number 9. As far as number 10, I'm going to take that pick if you don't mind, Akilesh.
But
This is going to be an interesting one because they have 3 options here to me, and it comes down to wide receiver. They filled in most of their holes on the offensive line, their defense. So I think for me, the New York Jets are probably going to go receiver. They signed Mike Williams to a 1-year deal, so it looks like they're looking to the future, what they can do to help Aaron Rodgers or whoever the quarterback is after. If it was just Brock Bowers and Rome Odunze who were here, I would probably say that the Jets take Brock Bowers. Um, but given the fact that Malik Neighbors is here, what I've heard from Malik Neighbors, what teams have been saying about Malik Neighbors, if he does fall, I think the Jets are going to go after him. I think he honestly fits perfectly with what they want. You look at a guys like Garrett Wilson and Malik Neighbors. I've compared Malik Neighbors a lot in the past to a guy like Reggie Wayne as far as the way they play their game. Not exactly great at anything in particular, but they just do everything just enough right that they can, end up having, constant 1,200, 1,300 yards a game. For that reason, I'm going to take Malik Neighbors. I feel he fits in kind of like a Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne role with the Jets. And for that reason, I think the Jets are going to take him if he's there at pick 10.
okay, first of all, I'm shocked that it wasn't Romeo Dinze, personally, because I felt Romeo Dinze was a better receiver. I think he's the second best receiver in this draft, personally, based on what I've seen on film, etc. Now, number 11 is very interesting. Jim Ortiz's standpoint, he can look at it as, I can take Brock Bowers now, and look, from this one standpoint, he understands that in the case that the Giants do what they've done, they're right behind the Los Angeles Chargers. We know they would love to have a Brock Bowers town, right? So Jim Ortiz has two options: go with Brock Bowers now, and then look at what you have from an offensive tackle standpoint, or you wait and then take an offensive lineman now, take a risk on Brock Bowers and not take him. I'm gonna not go and take the risk. I think I'm gonna take Brock Bowers out of Georgia to be the. I mean, look, we know we've seen the changes from free agency standpoint. We know what they're doing every single day. I think Brock Bowers is honestly gonna make the perfect setup for the Los Angeles Chargers. He's easily the best blocking tight end we've seen in a long time. He's an incredible pass catching tight end as well. He's the most. I think he's the perfect tight end. I really do. I think
I
he's
agree
the
with you
most perfect tight end to come out of any NFL draft. There's not one better tight end to come out of any NFL draft better than Brock Bowers right
I
now.
agree with you
So
for sure.
I think he fits the Chargers. We're gonna run the ball. We're gonna push it down your throat every single time, and we're gonna make you slowly, slowly, slowly give up. When you give that sound, we know we win, and we're gonna punch it in again and again. That's the exact system that Jim Harbaugh's trying to set. Brock Bowers fits. So I'm gonna take Brock Bowers.
You got pick 12 too, and I think I know where you're going for this, and I don't even think there's not a much explanation either.
Romeo Dinze it is.
There we go.
It has to be. I mean, look, from a receiver standpoint, they are. I mean, blasphemous. Really, that's what they are. They're horrible at this point. They've got nothing to them. I mean, it's like you make pasta without salt. What is that? Like that's just raw dough. Like no one likes that. So I don't know where you got that reference from, but we'll go with it. So Romeo Dinze, he's gonna add some pepper. The salt is still needed. I mean, clearly. I mean, after Saquon Barkley left, too much salt, if I may add. But they honestly need something at this point to from a. You know what? Honestly, I don't know what the Giants are gonna do, man. I just know that they got Romeo Dinze, who's a good receiver, great talent, great everything. Fits. I personally think Fritz Brian Daboll's system can really do everything need be. So good pick, but the Giants are going to be horrible. Giants fans, if you're listening to this, you guys are goners, absolutely trash. I mean, you guys are going to be the San Antonio Spurs of the NBA, just horrible. Like,
All I'll
just
say is Tommy DeVito will be doing this if they don't get Romeo Dunze. He's doing this right now based on some of your references as far as your delivery of them, but they're
okay, yeah,
references.
no,
So
no,
he
no, 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 no,
because
no.
of the
Hey,
cost and whatnot. So
hey,
he's also doing
DeVito,
this.
DeVito. I'm not even going to say your first name, DeVito. Tell me what your Giants got right now, because let me tell you something. You know what they got? Okay, in my household, sometimes when you do something really wrong, right, and your parents are they're just like frustrated at some point. They're gonna say you're gonna get an orta. Orta, you know what that means? You're gonna get an egg. Nothing. Zero. Absolutely nothing. That's what the Giants are right now. Daniel Jones, who is he? At this point, who is he? Offensive line, a bunch of nobodies you put in that offensive line, expect them to work some magic all of a sudden. You're nothing. You got a defensive line with Kayvon Thibodeau running around like he's a pancake or something. No whipped cream on the side. That's the problem. He's just gonna stand. Like you got a safety. You had a Xavier McKinney, and then you sold him for $150, or my bad, $1 million. Y'all got a lot of money, didn't make any use with that. No, this is literally like I'm gonna work my entire life, save up all the money. I'm not gonna use it in the house, and I'm gonna get broke. That's what the Giants are doing right now. Okay, so I don't know what's going on with them. I'll tell you guys right now. Be prepared for a bunch of beer cups being thrown on the stadium. Because guess what? A lot more cats are gonna come. Because the owners around, they are
Bro's bringing all the New York references, man.
horrible,
Bro,
horrible. In fact, you know what? They're gonna go from folding their pizza to literally tearing apart their pizza. Because that's what this team is going through, man. A tear apart session. This is horrible. Okay, Romeo didn't say it is. Yeah.
well, at number 12, or at number 13, I'm gonna the Raiders. A lot of people are saying the quarterback. I understand why they definitely need a quarterback. I just don't know why. It just doesn't seem like they're going to go quarterback. No mock drafts have been predicting it. The Raiders have been just kind of silent in that end, and maybe it's because they know who they're going to get at a quarterback and they're trying to be silent about that. It's just with the way this draft board has landed. I just again. Based on how many knees they have, I just don't feel like they're going to go with a quarterback this year. For whatever reason it would be, they're just going to kind of like wait for the time being and then find the right time and draft the quarterback. Maybe it's the right decision, maybe it's the wrong decision, who knows? But I kind of tipped my pitch earlier with who I'm going to draft. To me, I'm going to draft the best defensive player on the board for the Raiders, and to me, that's Terrion Arnold, who I think plays a lot of different positions. He's very versatile. You can add him to the Raiders defensive back line along with Nate Hobbs and Trayvon Morig. That's going to be a lot better of a secondary than it was last year.
with the New Orleans Saints, I think they need at this point right now. They do need some offensive help, especially on the line. I think honestly on the line they need a lot more help. So I'm gonna go with Fashan out of Penn State University. Okay, this guy, great hands, great feet. Um, Frankly, if I'm being very honest, he is a physical offensive lineman. I think that's what you need. Very raw, if I may say. Technique wise, he's good. But he's not good as others. But the reason why I think he will go to the Saints is he has a bit of edge to him, and I think the Saints all throughout, I mean, they really have that edge towards them overall. So I think that's why he's going to go with the New Orleans Saints. But again, there are a lot of offensive linemen you can go with this in this draft.
Yeah, I agree. Personally, I would say the Saints are a trade down option because I think that there are a lot of tackles you can get at that specific position. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't see any of the teams afterwards really going for tackle other than maybe Seattle. And that depends on the draft board. And based on that, where the Seahawks are right now, they can go for their quarterback for the future. They got Ryan Grubbs, their OC. They can definitely go for Michael Penix. But because of that, based on something I saw Mike Tannenbaum, and I don't usually agree with Mike Tannenbaum's takes. Usually he's horrible, just horrible at takes. There's a big reason why this man got fired from the Jets. I mean, and the Dolphins. He was just horrible. How do you hire Adam Gase, man? Just how? Why? Like, please, no. But there's a guy that the Rams are looking at who probably reminds me a lot of Matthew Stafford. Their best play in my watching the tape of both these players is very, very similar to each other. And for that reason, he might need a little bit of development, much like Stafford did early on. And for that
Yeah.
reason, I'm going to say the Rams end up trading just to just so that the Seahawks don't end up getting their quarterback of the future. And I'm going to say that they end up taking a first round pick because they always trade first round picks. And I'm going to say that they end up trading with the Indianapolis Colts.
That's a lot. Hold on, that's a lot.
I don't think they're going to trade that much. That's
Okay,
just
thank
because of
you.
the machine. But they're going to end up trading for Michael Penix at number 15, get their quarterback of the future, and then use the late. But yes, I'm gonna say they end up taking Michael Penix Jr. And then of course, like the Rams always do, they're gonna use their late round picks to end up finding some superstar to be the Rams and curse me as a 49ers fan for like the umpteenth year in the row because I hate the Rams. Um, yeah, yeah. To get out of my depressed mood, yes, the Rams are going to end up taking Michael Penix, and this is going to be a hell of a move for them. And Sean McVay is going to love this guy. He's tough. He is incredibly gifted as far as arm
Arm
talent.
talent.
Exactly what McVay loves.
Yeah, probably for me, my personal favorite quarterback in this entire draft class. Number 16 can go a lot of ways with this, as you mentioned, quarterback position. But considering that this blockbuster just happened, I don't think the Seattle Seahawks are going to go for a quarterback. They don't find, I think, the talent they need. I think they're going to stick with Geno Smith, but they're going to get an aggressive, athletic monster that I rated as my number one defensive end in this draft. And I'm going to go with Latu out of UCLA. I think he'll fall
Wow.
to the Seattle Seahawks. First of all, I mean, we look at that coaching staff, a young, aggressive coaching staff. They got a young, aggressive, honestly, one of the most talented defensive ends, right, to kind of come out of the any draft. Honestly, he's big in size. He's tall, lengthy, great arm. He has insane arm span as well for a defensive end. He gets that pass rusher quickly, extremely strong. I mean, you look at all the qualities you want, he has it. So I'm gonna take Latu out of UCLA at number 16.
So I'm gonna make it three NFC West teams drafting in a row, and this probably might be the most unrealistic. Maybe it's not because who knows whether the Niners trade up for this player. I want them to trade up. I don't
No
know if they trade up this time,
way.
but I think you
You
know
don't.
who I'm
Nah.
talking about. Um, Look, I want this player badly, and I think he fits well with the Niners. The Niners, it's not that unrealistic to me because given what the Niners were trying to do, as far as there were rumors about
Okay.
them trading for the 17th overall pick, trading Brandon Ayuk to get back Zay Jones and get the 17th overall pick. Obviously,
Mm,
they want two first round picks. There are a lot of guys that I like in this draft, but there's no more guy than I want than a guy who probably will help our defensive line improve after we cut said guy like Eric Armstead. Um, just for the realism of this, just for the sake of being able
yeah.
this trade's true, I'm trading this much to get this player. Realistically, I would say that the Niners only give up picks 31, 94, and one
124.
of 132 and 135, and probably one of 211 or 215, just because they're
Yeah,
trading up so high to get
right.
pick 17. But just for the sake of this, we're going to get pick 17. And I think you know who I'm talking about. To me, he's the best remaining defensive lineman on the board, and that's than Jerzon, formerly known as now Johnny Newton. Perfect player to add into Nick Sorensen's defense. You add him alongside Javon Hargrave and Nick Bosa, and I will be having wet dreams. He is terrifying. He is terrifying.
Hold on, what
My
dreams?
draft
Okay,
pick.
okay. Uh, um, Swiftly moving on. What dreams is okay? Swiftly moving on.
No,
Uh,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm playing, man.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Hope you are at least. Um, oh God, here we go. This is one. Okay, now obviously I didn't
Actually,
expect two
Akilish, if you don't
blockbusters.
mind, I'm gonna take pick 18, if
Go
you don't
ahead, go
mind,
ahead.
because I want to give you the platform to pick number 18 for a team that you like. Because I think that they're gonna go. I think this team is going to trade up. I think they're gonna be aggressive in this draft. I think they're gonna use the added assets they're gonna get after
Okay.
a huge trade that they made earlier. I think you know which team I'm talking about now that I said those two things. But I think the Chargers are going to trade up to get pick 18, either to get either
Okay.
a receiver or a tackle, and
Yeah.
they're in perfect position to do so with
Yep.
where they are right now. Who it is,
Thank you.
I'll leave that
Thank
up
you.
to you. But
Thank you.
I
Oh,
do
thank
think
you, man. Thank you,
that
man.
they are going to trade up for pick 18. I think with the way
Thank you.
the Bengals have handled free agency, I
Yep.
personally think that they're probably going to be one of those teams that trades down. And I think the Chargers
Oh,
are going to use their assets to trade up.
if this happens in real life, this will be the best draft the Chargers have ever had. Because with number 18, the Chargers will select Taisi Fuaga out of Oregon State University without a doubt. This is honestly a dream draft. Now, I must admit, personally, the offensive lineman selections that I've done has been strategically pointed towards for this to happen, right? For me, Fuaga is the second best tackle in this entire draft, without question.
Really? Wow.
Without question. Because when you look at it, he's bigger than most, but he's just as athletic, just as quick, just as smart, just as a technician. The only thing that separates him from Joe Alt, frankly, is from the get off speed and also overall technique. That's the only thing that separates both of them. Other than that, some areas I think he's better. Honestly, when you look at the strength, power, resilience overall, this guy checks all those boxes. He is gonna be the define. I mean, imagine Rashawn Slater and Fuaga on the same team. You kidding?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, destruction by all means. I mean, call it D-Day if
Nasty,
you want.
man.
This is it is. No, instead of D-Day, we'll call it LA Day. Why not? Like they're gonna run over every single person. And the third round, they said Blake Corum. Watch out.
Oh,
Super
they are
Bowl.
in position to draft a ton of superstars that will help this. I told you this earlier when we were discussing the Chargers in a previous episode when they hired Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, with the Colts in position of 19, I think this is a very obvious pick. They wanted to get L'Jarius Sneed, they didn't. So I think they're going to get a guy who has similar traits to him. I think they're going to go Quinyon Mitchell. He's very similar to a Kenny Moore. They don't want to talk about L'Jarius Sneed. Every Colts fan has been telling me to shut the hell up when I troll them about it. So Quinyon Mitchell, let's just go there before I get any
Yeah.
more threats, before I mock someone else. But Quinyon Mitchell at pick 19. But yeah, yeah. Colts fans, don't try to do anything to me, please. Thank you.
Okay, number 20 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, very interesting. We can go a lot of ways with this. Obviously, from the offensive standpoint, is really the only thing they need help in. They need receivers, they need offensive linemen. But I think for them, they are the type of people to take a receiver in the kind of second round, third round. That's the type of team they are. They're not a very aggressive receiver in the first round type class, but they are an offensive lineman aggressive class. So I'm going to go Troy Fulton out of Washington University.
Really?
Uh,
Wow.
again, physical beast by all means, very aggressive, very smart at the same time. I think they're going to develop him overall. I think he's going to be an integral part of whoever they select at quarterback. That's, again, a great debate for another day.
So with the Dolphins at pick 21, I think they got a little swindled by the surprise Johnny Newton pick. I think the fact that they were going to um trade.
Yeah.
I think that personally they were going to trade. Um, I think personally that they were waiting for a guy like Jerzon Newton. That's why they let go of Christian Wilkins. Um, it's going to be interesting what to see what they do as far as whether they bring back Connor Williams or not. Connor Williams was one of their better O linemen last year. I'd say he was probably better even than Terran Armstead, and that might be a hot take, but I'll still say that. He was a very good center. That makes me wonder whether they're going to take either a center or a defensive tackle. It's just to me, they're probably going to be a little more desperate at the defensive tackle
Yeah.
position.
Dude,
Byron Murphy reminds me a lot of that
yeah.
Patriots esque defender, and they've played with around with those guys, Zach Sealer, etc. So for me, I still think that they're going to end up taking a defensive lineman and they're going to go Byron Murphy. Whether that's a good thing or not, he's extremely athletic, so he has a lot to offer for a team like the Dolphins. Um, they need defensive linemen. Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb are recovering from injuries. They need to address that a lot.
With the Philadelphia Eagles, I think you talked about centers. I think the Philadelphia Eagles take a center, and I think they're going to go Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon University. At this point, I mean, you have obviously different. I personally think he's the best center. I think you have differing opinions on that standpoint, but I think he's honestly the best center in this class. When we look at overall technique, quick off the ball, smart, instinctive. When we look at Oregon, especially from a playbook standpoint, they're a very diverse playbook. It's not a West Coast or a spread. It's all over the place. And he's played with many different quarterbacks. So he understands systems better than most. So from that standpoint, I think they've got something that can, from the Eagles standpoint, Jason Kelsey obviously going away. You can have him as a mentor, and you can have him come in for being the center, and then kind of guiding the way for Jackson Powers Johnson. So I think Johnson is going to be a good addition to the Philadelphia Eagles.
It's interesting you mentioned that because just based on the fact we've talked about this before about the versatility the Eagles like to acquire on their defensive on their offensive
Offensive
line.
line.
I was surprised you didn't get mention Graham Barton, given the fact that he is a guy who can play any position really from that guard, from the
Yeah.
center position to a
Okay.
tackle, and
The
they need a
reason why I
guard
say
more
that
than
is
a center,
this.
in my opinion.
The reason why I say that is this, though. From a Philadelphia standpoint, yes, they've experimented with guards and tackles, never center. Center's always been one. So from that standpoint, that's why I went with Jackson Powers. It's a good point that you make, though. I don't know. It could
Right.
happen. It could happen. It's a good point.
Well, at number 23, I don't know what the Bengals are going to do with T. Higgins, whether they're going to trade him or not, but they need a third receiver. And hey, an LSU receiver is here. So why not, make this the LSU frat house, man? I mean, let's just put him in Brian Thomas, man. Joe Burrow is going to have another smoking cigar, whether it's with, I don't know, Donald Trump or whether it's going to be with, like in that UFC video, or whether it's going to be with Nick Bosa or whether it's going to be in the White House in that whole like get the Gat video, get the Gat video. If you guys have seen that,
Yeah.
very weird thing that LSU has been doing with the gritty. Hey, I'm speaking in Gen Z terms for any of you older fans, but I'm just saying LSU is kind of weird, man. And Brian
Clearly.
Thomas is going to add a lot to that mix in Cincy, also in Ohio.
What's going on, man? Okay.
I feel I don't know why I said any of that.
Okay. Swiftly moving on. The Dallas Cowboys. I don't know where to go. Okay. Uh, Gen Z vibes, ladies and gentlemen. Number 24,
I
the
love how we
Dallas
went from like,
Cowboys.
oh, the 70s was the greatest era of football. They're like, oh, let's talk about Ohio, man.
Uh, okay, clearly not swiftly moving on. But with 24, the Dallas Cowboys. Uh, wait, what were we on? Yeah, the Cowboys. Oh, the Cowboys. Oh, I want to mess this entire draft up for them. Hold up. No, 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 no. Okay, no, I'm gonna be reasonable. Okay, I think they're gonna go JC Latham. I
JC
think the
Latham.
Alabama. I think they need an offensive line. They've lost. A lot of them are older now. They've lost a lot of people. They need more staff to come in. Staff. What am I saying? They need more players to come in, kind of fill that void in. So I think they'll take JC Latham, Alabama stud offensive lineman at number 24.
Well, we were talking about versatility, and the Packers have lost a lot of offensive line this past year. I think they really are looking to more of those versatile linemen, guys like Zach Tom, guys like Sean Ryan, John Runyon, Elton Jenkins, guys like that who have that versatility. Even David Bakhtiari had that position, but the fact that David Bakhtiari just got cut, I think they're going to go for a tackle who's going to be that anchor in and very athletic, much like Bakhtiari, and be an anchor for them for another decade. For that reason, I'm going to go with who, in my opinion, is the most athletic tackle in this draft and an awesome player to watch. If you guys haven't seen tape of this guy, I highly recommend watching it. It is an absolute treat, sweeter than Hershey's Kisses. And I'm saying Hershey's Kisses because I cannot have Kit Kat. I cannot have any of those other chocolates because I'm allergic to them. Whatever. But Graham Barton is going to be pick 25 for me. Adds to that versatility as far as Packers offensive linemen.
Wait,
As
how are you allergic? How are you allergic to Kit Kats? No, I didn't know about
peanuts.
this. Kit Kats don't have peanuts.
Yeah, they do.
All of them?
Most of them I know.
What, the red ones?
The red ones certainly.
White chocolate.
I'm not aware of that, so I'll have to double check. But yeah,
Okay. I
yeah.
didn't know that. Okay. 26. 26. Hmm. For 26, I'm gonna go on a limb here. I've spoken about him on the shorts about defensive lineman, and he's not been talked about enough. Darius Robinson out of Missouri. I think
Ooh,
he's
I
gonna
like
be the
that pick.
selection.
I like that pick.
Todd Bowles is a guy who needs a versatility on that defensive line. The reason why that Super Bowl was a successful Super Bowl was because that defensive line could authoritate themselves on that offensive line, put the pressure, move them around, make them feel like rag dolls, throw them everywhere if need be, and then make Patrick Mahomes cry himself to sleep. That's the way Todd Bowles wants to function his defense. They've got Antoine Winfield Jr. back. They have Levante David, Devin White. They have all the pieces back. Now they need an defensive line that can enforce itself, that can enforce, honestly, have a ferocious, you know, method when it comes to attacking quarterbacks. Darius Robinson can do it all, man. I love this. I love this guy coming on in this draft.
So at pick 27, I'm gonna trade have another trade. The Cardinals are I think the fact that Laitu Latu didn't fall or any of these edge rushers didn't fall, I think they've been banking on that as far as what we've shown in the last mock draft and other people have. The Chiefs are rivals with the Bills, so they want to screw them over and get a guy who's a speedster. They went both with speedsters in Curtis Samuel and Marquise Brown in the case of the Chiefs. But I think the Chiefs want to find their future number one receiver, a guy who's going to help them as far as years to come. As far as the actual trade, I think they're going to trade picks 32, 131, and 159, and maybe a third or fourth round next year if
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to that. But this is the trade I see happening. But this is the trade I'm going to see happening. The Chiefs trade up to pick number 27 with the Arizona Cardinals. They're going to screw the Bills from getting a receiver who I think they might want, a guy who might be drafted a little higher than this just because of the fact that he had such an incredible 40. But that is going to be Xavier Worthy, a guy who I think fits perfectly in that puzzle that the Chiefs have put as far as those receivers.
Now with number 28 with the Buffalo Bills, I'm gonna go with the shocker. Honestly, I'm gonna take Tyler Nubin, the safety out of
Ooh,
Minnesota, to go to the Buffalo Bills. Look, they've lost a lot of talent when it comes to that defensive backfield. They've lost a lot of talent. They all overall they've gotten older, right? They need a new guy who can come in. Tyler Nubin is one of the best safeties I've seen coming out of a draft. He's athletic. He's quick. He's extremely smart. People, if you guys haven't watched him. I've only seen a couple of games because that's all I have access to. As Yash mentioned earlier, most of our money we're kind of broke, right? So I mostly off YouTube is the only way I'm able to study these guys. But Tyler Nubin, one of the best prospects, honestly. He has great hands for a safety, to be honest. Great speed, is incredibly smart. He can read the field better than any safety in this class easily. Um, Kinchins was a guy out of Miami that a lot of people were talking about in terms of a safety, but as you see the film, it makes more sense why Tyler Nubin is the better safety. I think this guy fits the Buffalo Bills. He is a nasty type of safety, so he can impose his physicality on any defense. Now, the question may come to, I do want to mention this, Yash. The question may come as to why Cooper DeJean was not coming here. Because Cooper DeJean,
correct.
honestly, I tell this a lot. He could play safety and he could be the most physical safety in the league. I would agree. However, based on the the Chiefs bunch of speeders, you bunch of speedsters rather. You look at their division, bunch of speedsters. You have Aaron Rodgers. You need a guy who has speed. Compared to Tyler Nubin, Cooper DeJean just does
Yeah.
not have the same speed. So that's why I went with Nubin in this case.
Honestly, I'm not. I did not think of that, and honestly, it's a very interesting pick. But I like it, and the Bills prioritize safety, so I really would not be shocked if this happens. But I think the draft boards play perfectly for the Lions. We talked earlier in the episode about the Lions wanting to go get a receiver based on what the moves that they've made as far as the defense and addressing those needs. This is the perfect puzzle for the Lions as far as what they need. They already have a deep threat in Jameson Williams. They already have that possession, move the chains receiver like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now you just need a guy who can get those 50-50 balls. You can rely on him for touchdowns. Touchdowns, touchdowns, touchdowns. And I think the perfect player for them is a guy with a lot of speed who had a lower drop percentage than any other receiver in this draft class, than in any other receiver. That he had, I think, the second lowest of any receiver in college football this past year, with more than 150 150 snaps played, and that is going to be Adonai Mitchell. I think he fits in perfectly with a team like the Lions. Jared Goff is going to love him. He's a Saints type receiver too. Reminds me a lot of a guy like Marquez Colston or Devery Henderson. Tall, can get those jump balls. Again, Jared Goff is going to love him. He's going to go after those 50-50 balls. Maybe not all the time. I think his effort has something left to be desired. But when he's on, he is going to be a really good player for this team.
Number 30 for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, this is a team that now has Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and a bunch of other dudes on the same exact team. And when I say a bunch of other dudes, a lot of talented dudes on the same team. You look at that offensive line, incredibly young, talented offensive line. Defense, nasty. Phew, nasty defense, right? But I think they need to solidify their offensive line. I'm going to take Amirius Mims out of Georgia to be that anchor that they need, the final piece to that puzzle that they need right now. I think this guy, overall, he's a good tackle, not as great as any of the other tackles mentioned above. I will say personally, from my standpoint, bit overrated if I'm being very honest, but he fits the system the best because he is, to be honest, a very athletic guy. He can, especially with the way I can't wait to see the Ravens play. I mean, you don't know what angle they're gonna go. Give it to Derrick Henry. He can run wherever he wants to. Give it to Lamar
Yeah.
Jackson. You don't know where he wants to run in the first place. So it's gonna be a system where the offensive lineman needs to have perfect communication, perfect everything from that standpoint. And I think Amirius Mims is the guy to do that.
Yeah, I'm also excited to watch the Ravens. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Ronnie Stanley and whether
Mm,
that's why they end up taking Marius Mims maybe to play right tackle because he's got a lot of versatility there, or
sure.
end up they taking a bigger guy like a Kingsley Suamataya, if I'm
Yeah,
pronouncing the name right, or Jordan Morgan too if they end up cutting Ronnie
you
Stanley
could go
straight
either
up.
ways. Yeah.
At number 31, I think the Jaguars, based on the moves they've made in free agency, they cut Darius Williams and they cut Rayshawn Jenkins. Um, I'm not a big fan of Nate Wiggins, so I'm not going to go with him. Anyways, I think he's
Thank
more of
you.
a zone coverage cornerback. Julian McKinstry, I think, is more of a zone coverage cornerback too, and I just don't see him to be a fit. So I think he's out. But the fact that they ended up tr- getting rid of a cornerback who has been very good in in Darius Williams and a safety who's been very good in Rayshawn Jenkins, it makes me think that they're going to go draft secondary in the first round. And why not knock out two birds with one stone, man? So I'm going to go and take Cooper DeJean. I think he's better than both of these. I think he's better than both these guys as far as versatility.
Mhm.
He's certainly got better ball hawking skills, and he's got great ability in man coverage. Trent Baalke loves man coverage cornerbacks. Ryan Nielsen loves man coverage cornerbacks who have some versatility, have some ball hawking skills. We saw that with a guy he wanted last year in Jeffrey Okuda. We saw that with how he utilized AJ Terrell. I think Cooper DeJean will be utilized in a similar way. We saw that with Jesse Bates too. That same range. Cooper DeJean offers that. For that reason, I'm going to say Cooper DeJean goes number 31 to Jacksonville.
Now, with the Arizona Cardinals, they're not as bad as the New York Giants. Let's not get that wrong, but they're horrible still, right? I mean, they are burning under the sun, ironically, because they're in Arizona. But the for this one, honestly, I wouldn't be mad with any position they go because they need help in all positions. But I think they're gonna go ahead. And similar to what you said, Yash, but a little bit different. I think they're going to go ahead and take another receiver. I'm going to go with a bit of a surprise. Keon Coleman, I think they're going to take out of
Wow.
Florida to be another receiver that they're going to add on. Now, obviously, it's going to look a little bit weird because, like, from price and money standpoint, like 3 years or 4 years from now, they're gonna have to pay both of them and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's all there. But the reason why I think they might go with Keon Coleman, based on the way this draft is going, is they can get two receivers who I believe Keon Coleman is a top five receiver. This guy has incredible talent. He can run everywhere if need be. He can play in any system. He's the most versatile wide receiver. He can block better than a lot of other receivers. And we also understand James Conner, who to me is the most underrated running back. He's not talked about enough. When we look at the way he can execute on that field, from strength to speed to everything, this guy fits every single checks every single box. So from that standpoint, I think they will go with Keon Coleman. Now, the interesting thing will be 2 years from now, will they still stick with Kyler Murray or will they move on to a different quarterback?
That
That's the
definitely is going to
question
be
that needs to
interesting to
be
see, man.
answered.
Well, what do you
Or,
guys think about our
or,
mock draft? Let us know in the comments down below.
okay.
All right. And so yeah, that was a very interesting draft that we did. But the next thing I want to do briefly, and I mean like kind of just over the next 5 minutes, kind of discuss is the new rule that the NFL implemented with the hip drop tackle, because I do think that was especially kind of important as far as just the future of the NFL. Akilesh, do you have any opinions, any thoughts on this new rule and kind of how it will change defensive approaches, whatnot? Certainly, I don't have great opinions on it. The kick rule, I think, is a little interesting, but I think it still has a lot to improve on. But at least the hip drop tackle, that one, I think, is the one that most people disagree on. So, what thoughts do you have on that?
Yeah, mashed potatoes. That's what I think of it. I mean, they essentially wanted to make a soft mashed potatoes out of these defensive players. What's wrong with the NFL at this point? Like, I remember seeing one of those shorts where it was like refs into 2000s where Ray Lewis comes in, like, he knocks the guy so hard, his helmet falls off. Nothing. It's just a regular tackle. Nowadays, you touch a player and the man starts flopping like he got hit with a bunch of tortillas in his face. Like, and then they're in the NFL is like, oh, ejection, blah blah blah, la da. I mean, like, really? It's soft. It's soft at this point. I mean, yes, people say it about basketball and how the rules have changed and made it less soft. No, it's a soft. That's just a soft move. What are defensive players supposed to do? You can't like, literally what they're saying is uh, this is one of my big problems with offenses overall and rules overall in any sport. At this point, to gain more viewership, to gain more views, to gain more money, what they do is they make the game in such a way that it's gonna be like, I'm gonna relate it to the NBA because the term soft relates most to the NBA. When we look at the NBA and people like JJ Redick, right, who I have much respect for, he has some great takes overall, especially the way he brings statistics into a lot of situations. Perkins may disagree with me right now, but I don't care. I'm gonna say it. JJ Redick is definitely the best NBA taker out there on any ESPN, whatever you want to call it, right? He brings in stats into a very useful way. However, his argument about saying the NBA is not or the NBA is not soft, it just doesn't flow. Like, if when we look at compared to what it was Michael Jordan era to now, it's softer. It's just the deal. Because what every single sports thing is trying to do is make it such a way that defenses can literally not do anything physically to an offensive opponent, that the game just gets really really close, a lot of scoring points, and then more people are going to look at it, right? I'm talking about the NBA now because that's where you can see the height of all of this type of hysteria, if you really want to call it. In the
I've
NFL,
heard the
that's what they're
game
trying to
broken
do.
like crazy offensively this year.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's think about this. In the NBA, right? When an individual scores 35 points 4 years ago, that was like, man, he went off today.
Yeah.
Today, if we see an individual score 35 points, yeah, like, man, that was a good game. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Like, if a guy scores 40, we're like, wow, you know, top-notch
Yeah.
game right there. We're not like, sheesh, 40 points. No one talks about it like that, right? That there's a difference, right? Because now it's a high scoring league because rules are so lenient. That's what the NFL is trying to do. Now we're gonna get more like 10 years ago, when a score was 13-3, we're like, man, that's a nice game. Those Steelers games, that was a Steelers
Yeah.
game in the 2008 season, right? Nowadays, I mean, no offense, but like that's just true. That's what it was. The offense was that bad because the defenses were able to do that much. And nowadays, when teams score 31, we're like, wow, that's a sweet game. That was not the case 10 years ago. 31 was a great game. That's what the NFL is trying to do. More points, more publicity, more money, but at the same time they're destroying the game. I think the game needs to have physicality. Like I get look, the NFL more than any of the sport. The NFL without a doubt. Football in general, American football in general is the one of the roughest sports out there. Without a shadow of a doubt, I can say that. And I understand concussions and things like that have been a growing problem in the NFL. That's why most parents don't want to allow their kids to play American football, right? So in that regard, I understand it. But at the same time, if you throw physicality out of football, what's football? Nothing. With specific to this rule, sorry I'm going on a rant, but I kind of have to. With this rule specifically, essentially what this is, in my mind, the hip drop tackle, all this fancy stuff, is just on Madden. You think about the hit stick. That's all this is.
Yeah.
You use your shoulder, boom, knock the guy out. That's a hit stick. Everybody wants to see that. Everybody wants to see that. Like, why would you take that out of the sport? Defense needs to have something fancy. It can't just be an interception or a sack or a tackle for loss. No one cares about a tackle for loss at this point. It's about those hit sticks. It's about knocking guys out. That's what no people want to see from a defense. Now, and then you take that out. Literally, what they're saying is the only way you can tackle is if you get low, use your head, look right at the guy's, I guess his abs apparently, and then you use your arms and just go boom. That's what they're literally telling you to do. You can't do anything else to tackle. It just, I mean, I can tell you one thing: the Eagles are going to have a tough time because they can't tackle for life. I mean, come on, like it's to keep it short and simple. The NFL is just doing this for money. It's not to help the game. It's defeating the game at all costs. And the third one is literally, literally, defensive players are going to just sit on the sideline because there's no point. They can't tackle. They can't do anything physically to improve their team. That's what I think about the rule. I think it's just again, I said it's mashed potatoes. I still stand with that statement. It's just a bunch of soft mix that they're trying to throw at you. That's all.
I appreciate
It's
your rant, Akilesh, but I'm gonna go a step further. I'm gonna go a little more vicious in the NFL. I'm gonna rip them even more if you don't mind. I
please.
completely agree with you, everything you said, and downright, you were right on every level. What I will say is, not every sport has gone to the idea of, basically, going down this whole offensive route. I think the big example of that would be baseball. But for the most part,
Okay,
in the
sorry
right.
guys. Look,
Yeah.
look, look. From my standpoint, okay, I don't understand baseball offense and defense. I really don't. Ultimately, at the end of the day, guy throws you a ball, you hit the ball. That's all. That's all
But the
baseball
reason
is.
I'm mentioning that is because, we're talking about this whole debate about, softness, physicality, and whatnot. And baseball is one of those interesting sports where it's not really like there's not as much like direct physicality. The most physical you could probably get is if a runner collides into the second baseman or the catcher at home plate, or if a pitcher throws an intentional ball at the head of a player at 100 miles per hour. That's probably the most physical you're gonna get,
Or
right?
maybe a fan throws a beer drink at you.
Well, well, I'm let's not go there. Um, not yeah.
Right, okay.
What's it called? But at the same time, I mean, the big thing about that is like you talk about physicality in most sports that have that, right? It's relatively limited. You talk about soccer, you talk about basketball, you talk about even hockey to a degree, but more basketball and soccer. I'm going to mention those two sports. You could get away with certain things. The sports are intentionally or inherently built off of fouls to some degree. So even if there is some level of physicality, there are going to be players that find ways to draw fouls. We've seen that in more physical eras of that sport. You had a guy like Maradona, who I know you hate, because of his, peskiness in some sense and his alleged ability to cheat during games. part of that, I think, that was there even in more physical eras of soccer back in the 80s, right? You look at players such as Michael Jordan, Rick Barry. These are guys that, they were designed to draw fouls. And then a guy like James Harden perfected that about a decade ago, right? In his ability to draw fouls. The thing that always drew me to football, even at a young age, was the fact that um, you could not cheat the game. Like you could not find this loophole in this game, right? Baseball, you can probably get away with sign signals, and we saw that to the biggest degree this past decade with the Astros cheating scandal. We've seen ways that, NBA players and soccer players can kind of draw fouls. The other sport I would say you can't really cheat is hockey, but of course they destroyed that sport with banning the what's it called, banning fights, banning hip checks, banning body checks to that degree. And now football is kind of going down that same path. Already you're limiting the amount of physical tackles that you can make. I grew up on the idea of watching Ray Lewis, Cam Chancellor, Patrick Willis, those types of guys making these incredible hits, well disciplined. And for the most part, that's the thing that really drew me to football. As great as the game was, as great as some of these players were, it was hard to get a first down. It was hard to get a touchdown. Like people talk a lot of the time. I hear, soccer fans always telling me that, the part of the reason why soccer is so good is because it's so hard to earn a goal, that when you earn a goal, that it's the ultimate form of elation, right? And I agree to that to some degree, but at the end of the day, soccer, you get maybe what, 3 4 goals in a game. In the case of football, you're getting still about 8 scores entirely by both teams throughout the game, but those 8 scores generally, whether they're a field goal or a touchdown, they're hard to get, man. And
Yeah.
the thing I think people need to understand is that we need to understand that offensive productions got worse ever since these rules have been put in place to, you know, help offenses.
Mm,
Like
good point.
the only offense that's really been of note to be put in that historic level is probably Kansas City Chiefs. As far as everything else, you look at the Broncos, you look at the Patriots of '07. These are all from the more physical eras of football, and these guys dominated. And these guys made it, these guys were doing so at a time where it was hard to earn those points because they were well coached, they were well disciplined. Now you're just getting careless football. People are not coached well. Okay. So now you're getting all these hits that are scarier, right? You get these middle of the field crossing routes that end up basically getting blown up by a guy like Kirby Johnson who'll go for the knees. A guy, a safety like Hufanga will probably blow you up in the head, get a concussion. Or you get, these scary plays like what happened in DeMar Hamlin or Tua Tagovailoa last year. All of these plays, I think to me, it just shows the sheer ridiculous ineptitude by coaches. One. Two, it shows when you get these hip drop tackles being banned and whatnot, you're talking about these refs basically, again, encouraging this whole, like you said, kind of this whole offensive commercialization, which is just, it's just, I mean, the best way I can, it's flat out shameful, right? It's flat out, I want to find another word. I'm just at such a loss of word. It's shameful. It's a disgrace to the idea of why the NFL is such a great sport. The idea of the physical nature, the idea that it's such a hard sport to play, that it's so scary when you see a guy like Ray Lewis. How do you avoid getting hit by him? How do you avoid getting tackled by him? How do you actually end up getting points through that? And yet, through all of that, you're seeing coaches are not coaching their players as well. As a result, you're
Yeah.
seeing worse and worse offensive production. And
Although, Yash, I will say one thing. You can't just say the coach is the reason for why, offenses are playing in such a careless manner. It's really not up to
not
coaches.
to every coach. I'm not saying that every coach, but
No,
I am
no,
saying
sure,
it
but
to a lot of
I would
coaches.
say I would say for every coach it's not the fault because the reason why I say that is if you position the rules in such a way where the physicality of the game is not of a necessity to adhere to or to put as a point of impact as it was 5 years ago, then obviously coaches are not going to be stressing those points. They need to be stressing those points that are ultimately more important. At this point in time, the physicality of the game was 3 years ago. The physicality of the game is not what it was 5 years ago, and it's progressed down each and every way. So
Well,
that's
that's what
why,
I'm saying. Yeah, either way, you talk about that physical nature. Now I think players are going to abuse it more, and we're trying so hard to get away from injuries and concussions and whatnot, and we're probably going to end up getting more and more concussions down the line. We have had more concussions in the last 3 years than in the history of the NFL.
yeah,
It's ridiculous that you're trying so hard to stop the problem and you're only making it worse. You're putting more players, and now you're putting defensive players. This is what I feel bad. Now, any linebacker, any edge rusher that comes, they're trying so hard to avoid getting a flag or getting an offensive player hurt that they're
yeah.
putting themselves in danger of getting hurt. And at the end of the day, it becomes this spinning cycle of how do you avoid injuries? No, you're not really avoiding injuries. You're
You're only
doing this
making
for the damn money. All right. This is the owners getting greedy. This is the owners knowing that a bunch of people who casually watch the NFL are way too soft to understand that, this is a physical sport. This game is based on physicality. All right. And you want to watch the sport to understand the nuances, the detail, and how hard it is to get a touchdown. You have to understand the game at its raw
yeah.
physical nature. And I'm not saying we have to get back to the 70s where, guys were straight up punching players in the face. I'm not saying we have to go to, freaking 1930s where Don Hudson would basically be choked while he was getting a touchdown, right? I'm just saying there's got to be some level of physicality. You look at some of these players who, were making these incredible hits in the 2000s, Ray Lewis, they were clean hits. It's just these guys
Yeah.
were so big and so good at hitting.
Strong.
It,
Yeah.
like it was terrifying. You got to know how to basically be coached to avoid those hits, to be coached to get that, and you're not going to get that if the rules change. And like you said,
Yeah.
if these guys are basically going to abuse the rules because now there's not as much physicality, and it's ridiculous. It's just flat out ridiculous.
I mean, another thing I want to mention is when you said more injuries, if we really think about it, the number of ACL tears, the number of knee injuries defensive players can have, that's all based on the positioning of the feet in themselves is going to increase multiply. The reason why I say that is at this point, if they're saying you can't even do this thing, you have to go, no, full down and then come under and then tackle the guy, your feet are going to, especially at the speed at which the game has to be now, right? Running backs are not like that slow. Like Derrick Henry, he's probably one of the slower running backs, and that's shocking to say, but he is probably one of the slower running backs, right? Even for him, your feet needs to be in the exact position, in the exact right place, right? You have to be coached on all that stuff. I get that, but like not every linebacker can do that, or every safety, or every cornerback can do that. So I think at this point you're risking, as I said before. I mean, mashed potatoes. Really, at that point, what you're doing is you're killing the game, you're killing its players, and ultimately what you're just creating is a money maker, not to impress the people. It's just a money maker at the end of the day. So 100% agree with you on that end. Overall, it's
Yeah.
blasphemous to say the least.
Absolutely. The next thing we're going to go into, and we wanted to do this a couple times due to time constraints, this hasn't got the chance. But as we are talking about the draft through short content and venturing there, we do want to kind of address just the main idea of the draft and kind of bring more insight into some of the more unknown players and some of the bigger questions as far as the draft. So, as far as just how this one is. This is a free for all section. I have a few questions that are like that are commonly that are common questions that are about this draft that I'm going to ask Akilesh and I'll answer as well. That just kind of give some insight and basically kind of like explain your side as far as what you think about this player, what et cetera. Give examples. Basically, this is like an FRQ for
Yeah,
any
yeah.
history AP
FR
class
no
that you're
FRQs for
using.
any AP. Let's be honest now.
Yeah,
FRQs
true.
for any AP.
Well, okay. So I think the first and probably the biggest question is, how many quarterbacks do you think are going to be drafted in the first round? How many quarterbacks do you think are going to be drafted in the top 10? Um, and what do you think the order of the big five after Caleb Williams is going to look like?
Okay, that was four questions in one.
Three.
Uh,
Three.
um, right. if I'm being very honest, right, in the top 10, if we or when we're looking at the order, it's what? Starting from Chicago, Washington, Pats, Cardinals, Chargers, Giants, Titans, Falcons, Bears, and Jets, right?
Correct.
In this 10, if we're looking at it, Bears at this point, they're taking Caleb Williams. That's pretty much like 99.99%. That's what's going to happen. Commanders most likely going to go for another quarterback. Pats. Pats is an interesting one. But after Mac Jones, I was like, it kind of has to be at this point. I think they are going for the quarterback, so that settles that. Cardinals, most likely not, because Marvin Harrison Jr. is on the board. Five Chargers, I think they'll trade out, most likely. And then you look at the Titans, they have the I mean, the no, it was the Giants next, I believe. Giants could take a quarterback. You never know. It might sound ridiculous, but they may go away from Jones at the quarterback position, even though they paid
It's
him
gonna
a
be tough
bunch
though,
of
given
money
that he's
last year.
paid 40 million. That, but
Yeah, that's what I was
yeah,
thinking, right? So that's that. And then you look at the Titans; they're not. They have a solid quarterback already there, and then you have the Falcons, who could take a quarterback. That's a very legitimate thing that could happen. Nine with the Chicago Bears. That's not going to happen. And then number 10 with the Jets, Aaron Rodgers. So again, they could do it though. It's an interesting theory. They could go for a quarterback because in their mind, what they could think is, look, we do have some capital down the road in the draft. There are many great offensive linemen. We need offensive line. We can trade up. We have the players needed to trade up. Right? They could go really down that route and have a backup quarterback. Rodgers is 39 right now. People forget that. He's not Brady. Let's be very honest. He has too many conspiracy theories to be Brady right now. Okay, yeah, I'm being very honest. Like, there's no way he's gonna last another 5 years, and like, no, that's just not
hey,
gonna
I
happen.
gotta, I gotta. While we're on that topic, I gotta address a funny joke I saw. Um, we saw an episode by The Daily Show. If anybody knows, Rogers had this whole thing where he was rumored to
Oh,
run for vice. He was supposed to be Robert F. Kennedy's running mate in the
yeah.
upcoming 2024 election. Um, so they made a joke about it on The Daily Show, and they were like, "So I'm confused. So how does it work if Aaron Rodgers is running for vice president and he's also going to be the quarterback of the Jets if they make the Super Bowl?" And then they just looked at each other and just burst out laughing. Because, like, let's be honest, everybody knows the New York Jets are probably not going to make the Super Bowl.
I mean, I'm not look. It could happen. It very well could
Hey.
happen. Okay, based on that talent, if it doesn't get injured, which is a Jets, that's just not. That's always gonna happen. But like, if it does, interesting question on the side. Will Robert Saleh be fired after the season if they don't make the playoffs? That's a good question, and
Yeah.
personally, I think he will. Another debate for another day. But back to this topic, I think in the first 10 picks, I think five quarterbacks could go. If I'm being very honest, in the first round of the draft, maybe six, seven quarterbacks could go. I
I
think
agree. I feel it.
that's my personal assessment. Again, eight is a bit of a stretch. It could happen very well, but at this point, I think seven is definitely a possibility. In the first 10, without a doubt, for me, five can go. Uh, Confirmed four, maybe, right? If we really think about it, for me, I think the pick that people aren't thinking about a quarterback is the Atlanta Falcons. I understand, they have a defensive coach there and all that stuff, but like at the same time, an interesting theory. I think Michael Penix will go. The reason why is they do have someone. I think their offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. I think I'm getting mixed up. Who was the head coach of Washington? Obviously, he did have.
That was Seattle, actually. It's not Atlanta.
Oh, Seattle. My bad. Um,
Yeah.
no, no,
Seattle's like pick 16.
no, no, no. In Atlanta, who was
No, their defense. Yeah, but he wasn't at the same time that Michael Penix was
Penix
there.
was there?
He
Okay,
was the
my
head
bad.
coach. He was the head coach right before Kalen DeBoer, and he got fired for punching a player.
Oh, okay, okay.
Jimmy
That's
Lake.
that's my bad. Yeah. So I mean, maybe it could happen. Michael Penix could go there. They could draft. I mean, they have receivers. They have Kyle Pitts, obviously, who has not even close to met the expectation that he should have.
Right.
If we're being very honest, but I think Penix could have an immense impact in that regard. So I think that's how the first 10 picks will go, and that's how the first round will go. Seven quarterbacks in the first round.
I think it's going to be six. I think the amount of quarterbacks that get drafted in the top 10 specifically depend on how many teams trade up. Always quarterbacks the most is the position with the most demand. So you're probably going to end up getting a lot of teams to trade up. There are a lot of teams that have obviously kind of cleared the way for getting a quarterback, a la the Minnesota Vikings, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Denver Broncos. However, some of these teams we mentioned in the mock draft earlier how the Raiders have not been exactly in rumors to go get a quarterback. What does the draft board look like? I think the other interesting thing is kind of the teams that are most likely to trade down. The Chargers are probably the biggest one, and they're divisional rivals with both the Broncos and the Raiders. So obviously, I don't think they're going to want to, trade down and give their rivals a
Chance.
franchise quarterback, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting how that looks up. And the other thing is just this reminds me a lot of the 2021 draft, where a lot of teams can trade down and get their guy. And I think it really depends on which receiver, which quarterback do they want, right? There was only one team that traded down in that 2021 draft, and that was the Miami Dolphins with the San Francisco 49ers. No team really traded up for a quarterback until the Bears did after the top 10 for Justin Fields. Um, and as far as the Dolphins, they traded back up to pick 6 and ended up taking Jalen Waddle, but he wasn't the first receiver off the board. That was Jamar Chase, right? So it's going to be interesting for me to see kind of, you know, like we said in the mock draft, does a Giants team maybe trade down for to get the guy they want in Romeo Dunze, or do they want Malik Neighbors? How does that work? Who do they trade down with? If they trade down with, say, the Broncos, like we said in the mock draft, then do the Broncos go up to 6? Maybe they go up a little further with the Cardinals, go and get, their quarterback. It's going to be a little bit, I feel like a chess game where it's just going to matter like you take your turn, you take your turn, and based on whoever what the position on the board looks like, I think teams might even trade up even further. You're not gonna. I don't think it's just gonna lead to one trade. The Vikings have already made one trade. I think the Broncos could potentially make one or two trades. I don't think they're going to be just limited to one. Maybe the Vikings go to pick 5 and then they go up to pick 4 with the Arizona Cardinals. You never know about that. So I think it really just depends on which teams are willing to trade down. Like you said with the Giants, you never know with Daniel Jones, but of course he's being paid $40 million. I think the same thing could be said about the Atlanta Falcons. They're paying $45 million to Kirk Cousins, and he's being paid for 4 years. So I just don't see them taking quarterback this year. But who they could trade down with, the Bears also want an edge rusher. They probably want an edge rusher. Do they trade down to get their guy and then let another team go up for a quarterback? That for that reason, I feel like 4 quarterbacks for sure are guaranteed to be in the top 4 or in the top 10. And I'll tell you who those quarterbacks are exactly. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy. Those without a doubt are guaranteed to be in the top 10. They've been in every rumor out there.
Hold up. JJ McCarthy, you're saying is
He's guaranteed. Whatever your opinion on him, I think he's going to be a top 10 top 10 player drafted.
okay. The reason why I'll disagree with you here is it's a guarantee if a trade is made into the top 10. Currently, at this
That's
point
what
in
I'm
time,
saying. I think they will. At least one trade.
I don't think you can like for me, honestly, only if it's the Vikings or the Broncos is JJ McCarthy guarantee. Because from my standpoint, I think JJ if a no trade is made, right? I know it sounds unreasonable, but I'm just saying for the sake of it, it could be the case that no one trades and then he could fall down to what
Yeah,
13, 14, maybe 12,
for
13.
sure. But at the end of the day, I think the 6 that are going to be drafted, they're the top 6 on the board. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. Those are the top 6. As far as the next question, how many wide receivers do you have with a round 1 grade? And who are those receivers? Not in any particular order, but just who are your round 1 grade receivers? That's a
Uh,
very interesting question. I'll have to pull this up for me.
yeah, I have a document open, or not a document open yet,
Oh, and
but
there's
I
a second part of this question. Are there any receivers that are outside of round 1 grades that you think have higher potential than the previous receivers that could end up being late round gems, but maybe have one or two problems that you're skeptical on?
Um, sheesh. Right, I gotta look at. Hold up.
Yeah.
I gotta look at my stuff real quick. Uh, hmm,
Oh. So I'll go first while you're
yeah.
checking your stuff. I have eight receivers graded as round one receivers. The receivers I have are both Texas receivers, in no particular order, by the way. Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell, as well as, of course, Marvin Harrison, Romeo Dunze, Malik Neighbors being the big three. I also have Keon Coleman, Xavier Leggett, and Ricky Pearsall, who I think is probably the most underrated receiver in the draft. I don't think he's going to end up going in the first round, but I do think that his talent is undeniable. He's that good and has no holes in his profile whatsoever. So I have to, based on that potential, I think he's going to be good from the start, and I think he's going to be good for a very long time. For that reason, I have Ricky Pearsall so high. Um, it's interesting because there are a lot of receivers here I feel like could be late round gems. Um, I'm gonna just name three. I mean, there are a ton I can list. You know, you're talking about Tez Walker, Lad McConkey, Jermaine Burton, Roman Wilson, JoJo Earl. Um, I remember Steve Smith was talking about what's his name? Javon Coke, if I'm remembering his name,
Yeah,
Jalen
yeah.
Coke. Um, by the way, if you guys haven't watched Steve Smith, there are guys that I would usually recommend to, look at their videos to break down certain positions. Chris Sims is a guy I always look to when it comes to his quarterback perspectives. He's not always right, but a lot of the time he gives really good insight on why quarterbacks are good. As far as receiver position, always look towards Steve Smith. He's very good at being able to understand, the physical nuances of receivers and how receivers use it rather than just saying, oh, he has great size, so he's going to be a good receiver. That's not always how it works, but Steve Smith really breaks it down in a great way that way. He's great at understanding speed, route running, separation. He's very good at defining the difference between the three. So I highly recommend going watching Steve Smith's videos on these. But he mentioned Jalen Koch. He's definitely one I like. Jalen Polk is another one from Washington, Brendan Rice. The three ones I think are probably the biggest for me are probably Ladd McConkey. Reminds me a lot of Julian Edelman. Faster. I think everyone understands the other difference about him. Um, Roman Wilson, who reminds me a lot of like a Mecole Hardman, and then Brendan Rice, who reminds me a lot of like a Cole Beasley. These are guys I think also are going to last long as far as their careers go in the NFL. Brendan Rice specifically because he's the son of Jerry Rice, so he's going to know. He's a thick, stocky receiver. Pause. But he like having Jerry Rice as your father, you're going to understand a lot more about durability, but his game also provides that. Um, and he's reliable as far as a pass catcher. He's great route running wise, gets a lot of good yak. So I like him that way. Roman Wilson, with his speed and his selective game, is a lot of what most teams value as a third receiver. A lot of Super Bowl contenders value that type of receiver. A lot of teams have that. You've seen, the Buffalo Bills added a Curtis Samuel. The Chiefs always have one or two of those guys, whether it's MVS, Mecole Hardman. Um, they had Demarcus Robinson back in the day. Sammy Watkins was another example of that. The Ravens have now Zay Flowers because they're going towards that example. I think the same thing could be said about Roman Wilson as far as his game, and he played in that Michigan system, so a guy like John Harbaugh will especially love him. And then as far as Ladd McConkey goes, his route running, his understanding of the game, his separation, and he's got a lot of speed. It's going to help a lot of teams as far as being able to get those move the chain type 10 third down plays, 10 yards. So definitely look out for those three guys. I think those three guys are going to be especially important, and you're going to see a lot more of those guys in the near future. So I would say those are probably my three sleepers. And like I mentioned, the other eight receivers are my first round grades. A lot of talent in this receiver. This is a really deep receiver class.
I'm mostly in the same lines as you. I have six, however. first round receivers going. Adonai Mitchell, again, the two Texas receivers, Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Romeo Dinze, Marvin Harrison Jr., um, Brian Thomas Jr., as well as, I know it's a bit of a shock, but I think Malik Neighbors will go in the first round just based off the talk. I don't believe the tape to me is not first round worthy, but based off the talk and based off the receiver needs, I think Malik Neighbors will go in the first round. That's my personal viewpoint on it. The three sleepers that for me it's actually more of two sleepers mainly. You mentioned a good point with Roman Wilson, but he wasn't really a sleeper for me, if I'm being very honest.
Mm,
I think he's a third round, second round talent without a doubt, but I'm not sure if he's a sleeper. For me though, I think Lad McConkey, as you mentioned, one of the I mean, people remember him for the was supposed to throw the ball, but I'd rather run it in the end zone touchdown. It was a great play, first of all, from him. But the other standpoint I think that people are missing is his ability to read and then execute. I think it's the best I've seen from any receiver in this draft class. Even Marvin Harrison Jr. The reason why I say that is because first of all, he plays in Georgia, where it's a run-defined system. At least it was for a very long time. This season, they have opened it up a lot more, without a doubt. But his ability to kind of run the progression of his routes, the speed change in those progressions, it's top notch. It's top notch. The other one that I wanted to mention was Xavier Legend from South Carolina. Most people don't talk about him enough, and there's a lot of skepticism around him. He's only played 1 year, but in that 1 year, when we look at his stats, I mean, I'm bringing up stats here, but in 12 games, 71 catches, 1,255 yards, averaging 17.7 per reception, 7 touchdowns, and quarterback rating when they targeted him was 127.1. That's outstanding for a receiver to do in his first season, really in his only season, right? Um, and he also had Spencer
Spencer Rattler.
Rattler, yeah, as the quarterback, who is a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, he's had a lot of problems throughout his college career, and he's had one of his best seasons this year. Without a doubt, this guy is incredible. I mean, you look at overall, he's extremely reliable to say the least. He can make difficult catches through traffic. Incredible top speed. I mean, he ran a 4.3 in the combine. So that just settles it there. His height is pretty good, but overall he's a solid build. I mean, literally he looks like a linebacker. You could literally put him at linebacker. He looks that strong. Reminds me a lot of DK Metcalf.
I was going to say
Excellent
the exact
size.
same thing.
Yeah, like really reminds me of DK Metcalf. He's quick off the line. He's strong. He's also a very good blocking receiver. The only doubts that I have about him is like when it comes to deep throws, his like pad level, chest level, when he's trying to catch the ball is oftentimes like he messes it up a lot. To be very
Oh
frank,
yeah,
that's the
he
only
kind of
way I
like
can put
yeah,
it. Because like you're trying to go like this, but he tries to turn his body around and then kind of brings it in here. It's
he
it's
kind of like
weird.
corrals it, kind of like really weird, like kind of like
Yeah,
kind
like he tries to bring it in here, but like
yeah,
rather than just letting it fall down. That's one of those problems that I had. But overall, I think this guy is like I have him as a first round talent, but he won't go in the first round for me because like no one's talking about him enough. Projections are not there. Maybe some people are looking at it. I mean, Sean McVay pulled out some crazy picks over the past few years, so he could do it. But I think for me, Xavier Legend is one of the for me, he's a top six receiver. Honestly, he's a top six receiver. But in terms of what can go and what will go, he won't go in the first round most likely. But those are my two sleepers in this draft.
perfect. So the next question, yeah. So I agree with everything you said, but as far as McConkey and then as far as Leggett, two receivers, I think Leggett I've been saying for a while, he's DK Metcalf with more reliable hands. Um, and as far as McConkey, all I'll say is if any young receiver wants to learn footwork, reading a defensive back, and being able to adjust accordingly, and being able to come back to a ball that's underthrown, there's one play you guys need to look at. There's one, just look up Lad McConkey route versus Ole Miss. You'll find that play. It is one of the best routes I've ever seen any receiver run at any level. He absolutely destroyed 5 Ole Miss defensive backs. It's one of the best plays I've ever seen by any player in.
Honestly, it reminds me a lot of Cooper Cup. He really
Yeah,
does in terms of that,
I
the
agree.
routes
Actually,
and
that's a
everything.
great comparison. Um, the next question is, uh, who are the more who are your guys as far as the draft? Guys that not are necessarily you think are the best players, but who are your favorite prospects to watch?
I'm not gonna lie, guys. I've mentioned my opinion on this draft. I hate this draft a lot. I really do. There's really no. I'm just not a fan of this draft. It's just all offense. We're gonna run all day, whippy, and yay. I don't. I'm not. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not a fan of this draft as I have been of previous drafts. But there are three people that I'm huge fans of. Number one, from the defensive line. You guys know my opinion on this. If you guys have seen the shorts, you know how I feel about this guy. Like he's one of my favorite players because okay, maybe the technique is not as top notch as you want it, and it's not as like I don't know, Aaron Donald esque and like all Bill Belichick. You got to keep your hands here, set the edge, and all that stuff. I get it, but overall, his charisma, the way he just shows up on the field, the feeling that he has. For me, Mohamed Kamara is probably my favorite player entering this draft class. He's so much passion, so much rigor, so much ferocity. Every single play, he's bringing it. And I love the trash talk. I love the trash talk, especially against Colorado. You don't do that in front of Deion Sanders, right? Like who wants to go up to Deion Sanders and just starts, saying anything he wants to? Like you don't do that, but he isn't afraid, and I kind of like it. For me, I think he takes on that villain role better than anybody else in this draft. He comes in and he's ready to give it his all. He's gonna give you 1,000% on every single play, and he's gonna help you win games. So for me, Michael Kamara is my favorite player entering this draft. The other player for me, a bit of an interesting one, if you will. People haven't talked about him as much, which is surprising to me because he has the best hands of any tight end in this draft, except for Brock Bowers, or maybe equal to Brock Bowers. I can't put that statement in. And for me, that's Dallin Holker from Colorado State as well.
Ooh.
This guy, I'm telling you, I mean, we saw the draft, a one-handed catch. He wasn't even expecting it. He just went, give me that. That's all. Like, he is spectacular when it comes to overall catching. Great routes, honestly. Yes, speed and maybe speed is surprising to me. A lot of people are saying speed, but I kind of get it if from because Colorado State ran a system where tight ends weren't like Travis Kelce type; they were on the line, George Kittle type. And for to get the off the block and come out and then catch it, he's a bit slow. Yeah, I get it, kind of. If some people say that, but overall, his hands, the smartest tight end in this draft. I can put that over Brock Bowers. He's the smartest tight end in this draft. He can read coverages better than anybody else. He's not as strong, not even close to as strong as the other tight ends. But he's a game changer. That's what he really is. If you look at that Colorado State offense, they gave Colorado for their money. And I know Colorado went 3-9 or whatever, but those first three games, Colorado was scary. The State came in and they put the fear in Colorado, right? Dallin Holker was one of the key pieces to that happening. So for me, another Colorado State Dallin Holker is one of my favorite um, prospects in this draft. The third one for me comes from the offensive line, and I mentioned it before in this podcast as well in regards to the Chargers and how in a very strategic manner, if I don't
I
say
know
so
exactly
myself,
who you're talking about.
came in down Talasfuaga. This guy is, I love him so much because the reason is he's so big, so strong, so athletic. He's a Penny Sewell but better coming into this NFL.
Whoa, oh,
The
okay, wow.
reason why I say that is this: he's bigger, right? He's stronger, he's quicker, and he's more athletic. For
I don't know about
all
quicker,
four
but
of those,
bigger and stronger for sure,
no,
and
I think
more
he's
athletic.
quicker.
I can agree with that.
I
More
think it's quicker.
agile, definitely.
When we say quicker, I'm talking about the standpoint of his get off.
Okay,
Let me
okay,
put it in that
okay.
extent.
Yeah,
Quicker, Penny Sewell is
yeah.
top notch. Penny Sewell is one of my favorite players in the NFL right now. But like this guy just dominates every single time. I mean, to me, he reminds me for some weird reason of Larry Allen. For some reason, he reminds me of Larry Allen. Big guy, monster. When it comes to the offensive line, he is gonna set like he's not gonna allow anybody to go past him. When we look at his film, like sometimes I wonder why he's not the second best offensive lineman in this draft. People are putting him at 4. I don't get it. This guy is strong as anything, physical as anything. He's gonna plow down. My nickname for him is literally lawnmower because he just plows on every single person he gets. He's gonna pancake them. He's gonna put the whipped cream, the maple syrup. He's gonna put the cherry on the top if need be. But he's gonna plow down every single time. He's gonna make
Sounds more like
grass
someone who
taste
works
sweet.
at IHOP.
Yeah, but I don't. I don't. Okay, I've never been
I've
to
never had an
IHOP,
IHOP
frankly.
either, so yeah.
Yeah, right. This guy just lawn. No, he makes grass taste sweet. That's what this guy does. He lawn mows so much, he makes the grass taste like maple syrup, and he pours that on top of that pancake that he's already got. That's what this guy is, man. Every single play, just power, 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 aggression. Like I love. If there's any player, right, other than Mohamed Kamara, that I'm just like, I will follow you for the rest of my life as a fan. As a fan. That was about to get into a stalker motion, but I will follow you for the rest of my life as a fan. Right? If if he comes to the Chargers, bro, I'm gonna buy I've never okay, guys, I'm gonna be very honest. I only have two jerseys. I've only had two jerseys in my life. One is a Cavs LeBron James jersey that my friend on my birthday, I still remember this. My friend on my birthday bought me for $60 in 2017. That's an expensive jersey. He bought it for me. It was the year the Warriors lost after going 73 and 9
Thank you so
against
much for
the
reminding me of
Cavs.
that.
Yeah.
A very painful
So,
moment.
so that year was the time he bought me that jersey. It's one of the most memorable jerseys of my life. Because if I'm being very honest, LeBron never won after that. So he won with the Lakers, but
Thank
I'll give
you
that
for
as a
bringing up
championship.
two really painful
Yeah.
memories for me.
And then you can't be complaining. You got a snake on your team and you won two straight. Just stop the complaining, right? Number two, as Stephen A. Smith said, it's the weakest move by any superstar ever. Number
That's a
two,
debate for a different day.
no, it's not a debate at this point. It makes complete sense. You Warriors fans are just lost it. Y'all just had a bad week, man, when it comes to basketball. I mean, the Warriors, we don't know where they are. I mean, maybe they're behind the Golden Gate Bridge. That's what's going on. And then because behind all that mist of theirs, the mist is a 50-point loss against the Celtics. And then number two, Duke loses. It's a tough day. It was a tough week for Yash. I'm not trying to, plow down as we go back to Fuaga again, but it is what it is. But okay, coming back to Fuaga, the reason why this guy can just dominate on every single play when he comes to Chargers, I was about to tell you guys the jersey, right? Second jersey I have is a Arsenal jersey that my uncle bought. Now I've got a lot more into soccer, or football, as they would say it in outside of America. I've got a lot more into it. It's an amazing sport. It really is an amazing sport. Tactically, it's more intensive than any other sport. I can say over football easily because the amount of tactical situations that they have to follow through, look at, it's incredible overall. And Arsenal's obviously doing well. So I'm more happy than ever when it comes in regards to that. I've never done this. I will get a third jersey of Fuaga if he comes to the Chargers. I'll be the first person to buy that jersey. I will wear it every day to school or college now. I'll wear it every single day to college. I'll be the happiest man ever if he comes to the Chargers. Again, if the Chargers do exactly what I told them to do, it could happen. You know what I'm saying? It could happen in that first round. But these are my top threes. I'm sorry for going on the rant, but these are my top
Hey,
three picks or top three favorite players entering this draft. But I just want to put this out there to end it off. Not my favorite draft.
just out of
Not my
curiosity, involving the question on Tyrese Fuaga, because you mentioned him being like of fourth by most mock drafts and whatnot. How many tackles do you have as with a round one grade?
Ooh. Okay. For me, round one grade.
Because I know Joe Ald is there, right? Fuaga, I would guess, and then
Yeah. For me, I'm gonna be honest. Overall offensive lineman, are you going tackles?
tackles, just tackles. Yeah.
Tackles for me, it's seven.
Seven. Oh wow. Okay, only at five. I got Joel. Okay, technically six because
Or
Fashanu is
actually
going to be
six.
listed as a
Six for me.
tackle.
Six for me. My mistake. Six for me. Six for me.
The reason I say six because five, but reason I say six is because Fashanu, I actually have him graded as a guard. But
Okay.
he's probably because I think he's going to
Tackle.
eventually switch to guard. I think he's better as a guard. But
Yeah.
tackle wise, he's listed as tackle. So yeah, technically it's six. The other guys I have are Jordan Morgan, Graham Barton, who I will get to in just a sec. Fuaga, Alt, and Joe Alt, and then who's the other guy? JC Latham.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those
I
are
that's my same. That's the same for me. That's the same for me.
yeah.
For me, the thing was Amarius Mims, he for me, actually no, if we're including offensive linemen in total, it was seven. If we're looking at offensive tackles, I was thinking about Amarius Mims, if I'm being very honest. But I think the thing with Amarius Mims is he's a very, very tricky prospect to grade
Yeah, for
because
sure.
when we look at that first round talent, there are many situations in which Georgia's offense it's really misleading. Um, because I mean, obviously Brock Bowers is there. That's the reason why I wasn't able to grade him. But no,
Right.
I couldn't give him an exact grade. But Amarius Mims could definitely go in the first round, and I wouldn't have much objection to that. But I'm not sure if I can put him in a first round grade. So that's where I fall on Amarius Mims.
Do you remember Matthew Pert? He went to the Giants a few years ago. He was from Georgia. He
Yeah,
was Andrew Thomas's teammate. He reminds me a lot of him, and based on the way Matthew Pert's career ended up, I'm not exactly I'm not exactly too high on Amarius Mims, but that's a conversation for a different day. Um,
yeah,
as far as my guys, as far as them, I have quite a few. Graham Barton, I mentioned, he's one of my favorite players to watch in this entire draft. His versatility, his speed off the snap, his ability to just lock hands and feet off the defensive lineman is just superb. Um, he's extremely agile and extremely smart in knowing which offensive line to get. He's a team player, so he works within the constraints of his offensive line, understands the limitations of his own teammates, and accordingly uses his skill set. Um, I mean, he is great at understanding defensive line technique, defensive line placement, and how that leads to eventually certain pass rush sets. He's great at communicating with the quarterback. Graham Barton, I think, is a complete offensive line player as far as tackle, guard, center. He can play all three of them at a very high level. Other guys I like to watch. I'm a huge college football fan, so I cannot leave out this list without mentioning, of course, Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, the three Pac-12 quarterbacks. Got to watch a lot of them. And Michael Penix is probably one of my favorite players I've ever got to watch. I mean, he's basically the quarterback that I am in Madden whenever I play as myself. He's just like they throw the deep ball literally every play, right? That's what you love to see in an offense if you like that offensive, if you love offensive players, you love seeing the deep ball. Al Davis would have loved this guy. He is so fun to watch. His arm strength, his ability to fit the ball in tight spaces, and the thing I love about him, he is never off. He will always hit the receiver in stride. He will hit the receiver in stride even if it's a 60-yard pass. That is something you're not going to find at this level very often. And that's something that I love about Michael Penix. Where now you're looking at other details about his profile, there leaves something to be desired there. Obviously, the injury history, but just watching him is an absolute treat. And the fact that Washington got to go to the national championship and play my Michigan Wolverines, it's something I will never not remember. It's something that generations down you have to tell you to your grandkids, something like that. Um, the other players I would probably mention, I've mentioned him on several occasions, but Jerzon, Johnny Newton, um, he is a complete defensive line prospect. Hand placement, pass rush moves, pass rush counters, agility, ability to manipulate holes, understanding technique. He can play three technique, nose tackle, edge rusher, off the ball defensive lineman like a JJ Watt type role. He's great at all of them. His only true limitation is he lacks something sometimes in the run to game. He's not exactly known as a tackles for loss guy, and he's a little bit small, but just getting to watch him is an absolute treat because he just does everything that you saw Aaron Donald do for a year, for years on in the NFL. That's what he was in college, Johnny Newton. And I'm not saying he did it to the exact same level that Aaron Donald did it at, but when you get a player that's similar to Aaron Donald, it's really fun to watch. It's really, really fun to watch when their games are that similar. Braylon Trice is another guy I'd probably mention for similar reasons, edge rusher out of Washington. But I think my favorite player in this draft that I've got to watch, and this kind of transitions the really the last question, which is what's your true sleeper pick? I'm gonna say it over and over and over again. You're gonna hear this a lot. Kalen Bullock. Kalen Bullock. This is the best safety prospect I've ever graded. And I know I've not graded, for a long time. I've graded since 2017. He is the complete prospect by every measurement I've seen. Graded side to side range, graded baiting the receivers, zone coverage or baiting the receivers and the quarterbacks. IQ superb. Plays man, zone, press, off coverage at an elite level. Tackling form, second to none, first off. Then you talk about his ability to manipulate holes, blitzes. He has pass rush moves of a very skinny outside linebacker. His ability to hit hard. He is extremely physical. He reminds me a lot, and I'm not saying he's going to be this guy because obviously it's really hard to be the greatest safety on the planet ever. But he reminds me a lot game wise of Ed Reed, just straight up the ability to basically manipulate quarterbacks' eyes to get
Oh,
down the field and be able to hit the guy in the same way. His game is very,
oh,
very similar to Ed Reed. And
you can't
that's what I
no.
love about Kalen Bullock. He is just,
You
he's
no, no,
ahead of the
no,
game
stop.
by 2 steps. And I'm not saying he's going to be Ed Reed, but what I am saying is that when you, like I said, with Michael Penix, the same thing. When you get a guy, or when it comes to a guy like Johnny Newton, same thing. When you get guys who could play like some of the greatest players of all time, it's so fun to watch. And for me, Kalen Bullock is the best safety I've ever graded. He's my number one safety in this draft class. And whether he ends up becoming Ed Reed or not, I will say right here, as long as injuries don't hit him, Kalen Bullock, I think, is going to be a future Hall of Fame. I hope that I am right about this in 10 years, but I genuinely believe this, man. He is so good on so many levels. It's not even close. But that's my sleeper pick. And he's also one of my favorite players for that reason. And I genuinely think that he's going to end up being one of the best safeties in the league 2, 3 years from now.
I don't know what to say. You, I'm okay. Kalen Bullock is definitely a great prospect. He's extremely underrated. People aren't talking about him enough. Great size, great speed, great range more than anything else. I
Yeah.
think in his game is one of his big points, but he's not an Ed Reed. I can say that's 100%. I can say he's not an Ed Reed without a doubt. What I will say from Kalen Bullock's standpoint is he has the ability to really move around as a free safety in a way that I haven't seen from many prospects overall. But I'm not saying he's an Ed Reed by any measures. But your opinion, I'm just gonna leave that to you. As a sleeper pick for me, I guess that's the way we're
Yeah.
going about this. For me, a sleeper pick, I'm gonna go back with the individual that I mentioned before from the tight end standpoint, and that is um, as I mentioned before, it has to be Dallin Holker. For me, that is a sleeper pick.
I
This
agree
guy's
with you.
projected to not even be drafted or to be drafted in the sixth round. This guy, for me, this guy has Hall of Fame potential. The reason why I say that is in the current NFL, the ability to be a receiving tight end is much more valuable. And this guy for me, he reminds me of a better receiving tight end, George Kittle. That's what he reminds me of. He reminds me of a guy that's not as big, he's not as fast as Travis Kelce, not as strong as Rob, but he has all the abilities needed. Like this guy is a consistent 900-yard receiver type tight end. Consistently, he could do this for 14 years because he's that well built. He has the right amount of speed, right amount of quickness overall. Um, like for example, when I look at Brock Bowers, he is not a 900-yard receiver. He's a 500-yard receiver with excellent blocking abilities. When I look at Dallin Holker, I think of a 900-yard receiver, 12 touchdowns a year, almost in Antonio Gates type years, consistently again and again and again. So that's what I think of Dallin Hall. I think this guy's gonna be the sleeper of the draft personally. So that's my sleeper of this draft.
And as far as the draft goes, there are so many players that when you get a draft of 260 or whatever picks it is, I don't know whether they've changed it or whatnot. But when you get that many picks, you're gonna get a lot of sleepers. So there are a lot of players that we have not mentioned that are gonna end up being well. We're gonna talk about them in short form content and whatnot. But this is the great part about the draft season. Um, and this is the great part about the NFL. You learn about so many players that you've never ever heard about, that make huge names for themselves, and that's why we want you guys to kind of join our community as much as we're trying to, prove ourselves on a bigger platform and kind of explain the game of football even more and more and help you guys understand the great beauty of it. But as far as today's episode, that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It was a treat for me, for both me, and I could definitely say for Akilesh. And I hope you guys come back soon again. Remember, this is the Winning Browns podcast, where two Indian kids try to win over more fans than the Browns could win Super Bowls, games. It doesn't matter. Hell, we can win more fans than the Browns win fans.
Yeah,
Um, and
how about
you know,
achievement of a lifetime?
absolutely. And for that matter, I mean, any other final thoughts, Akilesh?
All I gotta say is I'm excited for spring break. I'm excited that it's happening right now, and I can't wait for the next episode. So see you guys
Absolutely.
later.
Make sure to like and subscribe. Peace.
Bye.